I moved to Texas, built a real estate empire from nothing, while my family ignored me for 30 years. No calls, no visits, no gratitude. Then suddenly the phone rings. Dad, sell everything. Sophie needs expensive treatment or she'll die. I smiled coldly and replied with just 3 words. His face turned to pure horror. Before continuing, subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is in your region right now. My name is Rudolph Harper. I'm 68 years old and I live in Galveston, Texas. Built a commercial real estate business from nothing over 30 years. People say I'm cold, calculated. Maybe they're right. Life taught me that sentiment is expensive, and I stopped paying that price a long time ago. My son James. That's where this story gets interesting. He's 42 now, living in Columbus, Ohio with his wife Rebecca. When his mother and I divorced 3 decades ago, he chose to stay with her. Can't blame a 12-year-old kid for that choice. What I can blame him for is the 3 decades of silence that followed. James wasn't always like this. I remember when he was 7, running to show me every picture he drew, every test he aced. His eyes would light up when I came home from work, but somewhere between childhood and adulthood, that light went out. Or maybe it just redirected toward a different kind of glow, the kind that comes from dollar signs. Rebecca entered his life 15 years ago. Beautiful woman, I'll give her that. The kind of beauty that comes with a price tag attached to everything it touches. Designer handbags, expensive restaurants, private school for their daughter Sophie, all on a middle management IT salary. The math never worked, but that wasn't my problem. I stopped being James's problem solver when he stopped calling me Dad and started calling me, well, he stopped calling altogether. The last time I asked them to visit was 15 years back, Thanksgiving. I'd just closed a deal on a commercial building in Houston, was feeling generous, wanted to share the holiday with family. Called James up, offered to fly them down, put them up in a nice hotel. His response still echoes sometimes when I'm alone with my scotch. We're too busy, Dad. Rebecca's family does this big thing, and Sophie's got activities. Maybe next year. Next year never came. Neither did the year after, or the one after that. The calls became emails. The emails became birthday texts. The birthday texts became nothing at all. 8 years of complete silence. Not a word, not a holiday card, nothing. Then, one Tuesday morning this past February, my phone rang. Unknown Ohio number. I almost didn't answer. Telemarketers love me for some reason, but something made me pick up. Dad? I actually looked at the phone to make sure I'd heard right. James's voice, older but unmistakable. James, I kept my tone neutral. 30 years in business deals taught me never to show surprise. This is unexpected. Yeah, I know it's been a while. A pause. Too calculated. I've been thinking we should talk, like adults, about the future. The future, not I'm sorry, not I missed you, not I was wrong, just the future. I felt something cold settle in my chest, something that felt a lot like certainty. What future would that be? I asked. Our family's future, Dad. I think it's time we had a real conversation. Put the past behind us. Move forward. I looked out my office window at the Gulf waters. A yacht was passing by, probably worth more than James made in 5 years. Funny how perspective works. I'm listening, I said. Not on the phone. It's important. Can I call you back in a few days? Maybe we can set up a time to really talk? Every instinct I'd honed over 3 decades of reading people across negotiating tables started firing. This wasn't reconciliation. This was reconnaissance. Sure, James, you have my number. Use it whenever you're ready. I hung up before he could respond. Small power play, but I've found that control of the conversation ending often predicts control of the conversation's content. I sat there for a long minute, watching that yacht disappear toward the horizon. After 8 years of silence, my son calls talking about the future and wants to have a real conversation. I pulled up my computer and did something I should have done years ago. Searched for James Harper, Columbus, Ohio. LinkedIn profile popped up immediately. IT project manager at some tech firm. Standard corporate headshot. Standard corporate bio. Nothing interesting until I saw his connections. One of them was me. Rudolph Harper, CEO, Harper Commercial Properties. I clicked on my own profile, seeing it through fresh eyes. There it was. The beach house worth $4.2 million. The commercial portfolio across 3 states. The board memberships. The lifestyle that screamed money, louder than any bank statement ever could. He'd looked me up, recently too, based on when he'd sent the connection request. 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks before his sudden desire to reconnect. I leaned back in my leather chair, the one I'd bought after my first $1 million deal, and smiled. Not from happiness, from something darker, more certain. "Checkmate before the game even starts, James," I said to the empty office. "But let's see how you play anyway." The next week crawled by. James called again, right on schedule. This time, Rebecca was on the line too. The warmth in her voice could have melted ice. "Rudolph, it's so wonderful to finally talk to you. James has told me so much about you." Funny, because James had barely spoken 10 words about me in 15 years, but I played along. "Rebecca, good to hear from you. We were just saying how silly it is that we've let so much time pass. Family is everything, you know? Family is everything." Coming from a woman who'd actively prevented my son from visiting for 15 years, the irony was so thick I could taste it. James jumped in, his voice carrying that same calculated warmth. "Dad, I was thinking, maybe we could plan a visit. Come down to Texas. See what you've built there. Rebecca and Sophie have never been to Galveston." "That could be arranged," I said carefully. "Great. We'll start looking at dates, maybe in a few months." Rebecca's voice rose with artificial excitement. "Oh, I'm just so happy we're doing this. Families should stick together." After we hung up, I sat in my study overlooking the water, a glass of 20-year scotch in my hand. The ice clinked against the crystal, a sound that usually brought peace. Not tonight. They wanted something. That much was obvious. The question was what, and more importantly, how much? I picked up my phone and made a call I'd been considering since James's first contact. "Welch Investigations." The voice was professional, efficient. "I need to speak with Curtis Welch. It's regarding a personal matter." "One moment, please." The moment stretched. Outside my window, the sun was setting over the Gulf, painting everything gold and red, beautiful and cold, like everything else in my life had become. "This is Curtis Welch." "Mr. Welch, my name is Rudolph Harper. I need someone investigated, thoroughly, starting with their financial situation and going from there. Can you do that?" "That's what I do, Mr. Harper. Who's the subject?" I took a long drink of scotch, feeling it burn down my throat. My son. The week after hiring Curtis Welch, I played the role James wanted me to play. The eager father, thrilled at reconciliation. It wasn't hard. I'd been playing roles in business negotiations for decades. This was just another deal. Another game of chess where showing your real hand meant losing. James called 3 more times. Each conversation followed the same pattern. Warm greeting, family talk, casual questions about my business, vague mentions of when we visit. Rebecca would chime in with comments about how Sophie was dying to meet her grandfather. The grandfather who'd sent birthday cards for 16 years and never received a thank you. I remembered those cards, picking them out carefully, writing messages I hoped sounded grandfatherly. The first few years I'd included checks. $50, then $100 as my business grew. Never cashed. Eventually I stopped including them. The cards continued, though, right up until 2 years ago when I realized I was performing for an audience that had left the theater. During the 4th call, James dropped the first real hint. "You know, Dad, I was looking at your LinkedIn. Impressive portfolio you've built." "Thank you." I kept my voice neutral, but my hand tightened on the phone. "That Heritage Plaza building in Houston, when did you acquire that?" 7 years ago. Why do you ask?" "Just curious. It's amazing what you've accomplished. Really makes me think about—" He trailed off. "Think about what, James?" "Oh, just opportunities. Investment opportunities. Building something for the next generation, you know?" There it was. Not even subtle. I'd seen more finesse from used car salesmen. "Investment opportunities," I repeated. "Interesting topic. Maybe we could talk about it more when we visit? I've been thinking about diversifying, and you've got so much experience." Experience. Not wisdom, not guidance. Experience he could monetize. "We'll talk," I said, "when you visit." After hanging up, I poured another scotch and walked out onto my balcony. The gulf stretched out before me, dark and endless. I thought about the last time I'd truly felt like James's father. He was 16. His mother had called me, rare occurrence even then because James wanted to talk about colleges. He'd gotten into Ohio State, was excited. I offered to help with tuition. She'd said no, they could handle it. I insisted. She accepted grudgingly. 4 years I paid. Every semester. Never got a thank you from James directly, just a forwarded receipt from his mother showing the payment had been applied. When he graduated, I sent a card with a check for $5,000. Congratulations money, I'd written. Start your future right. That check did get cashed. Fast. No thank you, though. No call. Nothing. I told myself it didn't matter. He was young, building his life. But standing on my balcony now, 24 years later, I realized it had mattered. Every silence had mattered. Every ignored birthday, every missed holiday, every year of being erased from my son's life, it all mattered. The sharp bite of betrayal I felt then was nothing compared to what I was feeling now. Because now, James was back, and it had nothing to do with me and everything to do with what I owned. My phone buzzed. Email from Curtis Welch. Initial findings attached. More to follow. I opened the attachment on my tablet. The first page made me raise my eyebrows. The second page made me smile. Not a happy smile. The kind of smile a shark makes. James Harper. Total debt, $67,000. Credit cards maxed. Car payments 3 months behind. Rebecca Harper. Spending patterns consistent with someone living well beyond means. Designer purchases totaling $43,000 in the last year. Alone. Sophie Harper. Private school tuition, $35,000 annually. Current balance due, $18,000. They were drowning. Not waving, drowning. And dear old Dad with his beach house and commercial empire must have looked like a life raft with a champagne bar attached. I thought about calling James right then, asking him point blank what he wanted. But that's not how you win. You win by letting your opponent think they're in control while you stack the deck. Curtis's report continued. Rebecca's social media showed constant luxury vacation photos, all funded by credit cards. James's LinkedIn showed 3 job changes in 5 years, each with a slight salary decrease. They were in a death spiral, spending to maintain an image while the foundation crumbled beneath them. My phone rang. James again. Hey, Dad, quick question. What dates work best for our visit? I looked at the financial report on my screen, then out at the Gulf, then made my decision. How about next month? I'll have my assistant send you some options. That's perfect. We're really looking forward to it. Rebecca's already planning outfits. He laughed. It sounded forced. I'm sure she is, I said dryly. See you then, James. After hanging up, I called Curtis Welch back. I need you to dig deeper, I said. Everything. 10 years back. I want to know every financial transaction, every relationship, everything that doesn't add up. And Curtis, take your time. Be thorough. How thorough? Thorough enough that I know things they've forgotten they did. Understood, Mr. Harper. This kind of deep dive will take a few weeks. Take a month. I've got time. Because I did have time. All the time in the world. James and Rebecca were coming to me, hats in hand, thinking I was the foolish old man who'd roll over and write checks because they'd finally deigned to acknowledge my existence. But I'd spent 30 years in commercial real estate. I knew when someone was selling and when someone was desperate, and desperate sellers always revealed more than they intended when you let them talk long enough. I walked back inside, the Gulf breeze following me. On my desk sat a photograph I kept face down most days. Picked it up now, looked at it. James at 7, gap-toothed smile, holding up a drawing of our house. Best Dad, written in crayon at the top. I traced the edge of the frame with my thumb, feeling something cold and hard settling where sentiment used to live. Let's see what you really want, son, I said to the picture, and then let's see what you're willing to do to get it. I placed the photo face down again and made one more call. Martinez Law Office. Gerald Martinez, please. Tell him it's Rudolph Harper. I need to discuss updating my estate plans. Because if James wanted to talk about the future, we'd talk about the future. Just not the one he was expecting. The game was on, and I'd always been very, very good at games. The first week passed like watching a slow-motion train wreck. You know what's coming, but you can't look away. James called every other day now, always with Rebecca listening in, her sugary voice providing backup vocals to his performance. They'd mastered the art of the casual probe, asking about my properties like they were making small talk, mentioning investment strategies like they'd just thought of them, dropping hints about Sophie's future college fund with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer. I watched them work with the detachment of a scientist, observing lab rats. Fascinating, really, how transparent desperation becomes when you know what to look for. Dad, I was thinking, James said during one call, his tone carefully casual. When we come visit, maybe you could show me around some of your properties. I'd love to see what you've built. Translation: I want to know exactly how much you're worth. Sure, I said. I'll give you the full tour. Rebecca jumped in, couldn't help herself. Oh, James showed me pictures of Galveston online. Those beachfront properties are just stunning. You must have quite the portfolio there. Translation: We've been stalking your assets online. I do all right, I said mildly. After we hung up, I poured my evening scotch and pulled up Curtis Welch's latest report on my tablet. The man was thorough. I'd give him that. Rebecca Harper had purchased a Louis Vuitton handbag 3 days ago, $2,400, charged to a credit card that was already 87% maxed out. James had taken out a personal loan 2 months back, $15,000 at 18% interest. The money disappeared into their checking account and came out in dribs and drabs. Luxury dinners, car payments, Sophie's dance classes at 120 per session. They were bleeding money from every pore, and I was supposed to be the tourniquet. The phone rang again. I checked the caller ID. Ohio, of course. Rudolph! Rebecca's voice was bright enough to power a small city. I hope we're not calling too late. It was 7 p.m. Not at all. I was just telling James we should really nail down dates for our visit. Sophie's so excited to meet you. She's been asking about her grandfather nonstop. The granddaughter, who'd never sent a thank you note for 16 years of birthday cards, was suddenly eager to meet me. Sure. What works for you? I asked. Well, Sophie's spring break is coming up in a few weeks. We were thinking maybe then? Unless that's too soon. Too soon. They couldn't even wait a month. The financial vice must be tightening faster than I thought. Spring break works, I said. I'll have my assistant arrange some hotel options for you. Oh, we couldn't impose like that, Rebecca said, but I could hear the calculation in her voice. Though if you have recommendations, I'll send them over. After we hung up, I sat in my study, watching the Gulf turn dark under the setting sun. A commercial fishing boat was heading in, lights blazing against the dusk. I thought about fish and hooks and bait. My phone buzzed. Text from Curtis Welch. Found something interesting. We'll send full report tomorrow, but thought you should know. Rebecca Harper had an affair 17 years ago. Fitness instructor named Brandon Thompson. Timeline coincides with Sophie's birth. I read the message twice, then a third time, 17 years ago. Sophie was 16. I called Curtis immediately. Tell me more. Records from the gym where Rebecca was a member. Brandon Thompson worked there as a personal trainer. Several witnesses remember them being close. Very close. The affair lasted about 8 months, according to interviews. Then Thompson left the gym, moved to Indianapolis. Can you find him? Already did. Married now, 2 kids, works as a physical therapist. Clean record, seems like a decent guy. I need a DNA comparison. That's complicated. I don't care about complicated, I care about results. How do we get samples? There was a pause. Sophie's got an active Instagram, posted from a salon 2 weeks ago. We might be able to get hair samples from the salon's trash. Thompson's trickier, but there are ways. It's not going to be cheap. I'm not looking for cheap, Curtis. I'm looking for truth. Get it done. Understood. I ended the call and stood there, looking at my reflection in the darkened window. Behind me, my study was warm, expensive, comfortable. Everything I'd built over 30 years. And my son, the man I'd raised, paid for, supported, was coming to take it with lies and manipulation. But there was a possibility, a small but growing possibility, that the girl they were using as leverage wasn't even James's daughter. I smiled at my reflection. Not a nice smile. The next morning, I called Gerald Martinez, my attorney. We'd worked together on several property deals over the years. Sharp mind, sharper ethics. which in a lawyer is rarer than you'd think. "Rudolph," he answered. "Good timing. I've been reviewing those estate planning documents you asked about." "Good. But I need to add something to our scope. Paternity law. Specifically, what happens when someone discovers a child isn't biologically theirs?" There was a brief silence. "That's a significant pivot. This related to your son?" "His daughter, potentially. I need to know the legal implications if it turns out she's not his biological child. Child support obligations, inheritance rights, the works. Texas law is pretty clear on this. If he's been acting as the father, he's got parental rights, regardless of biology. But if he's not the biological father and someone else claims paternity, that changes things, especially if there's proof the mother concealed the real father's identity. Get me everything. Precedents, likely outcomes. What kind of evidence would be needed in court? This is going to get messy, Rudolph. It already is messy, Gerald. I'm just cleaning it up. 2 days later, Curtis sent his full report. 90 pages of documentation, photographs, witness statements. Rebecca and Brandon Thompson had been inseparable during those 8 months. The gym's owner remembered them. Other members remembered them. One woman even commented that she'd thought Rebecca was pregnant when she suddenly stopped coming to the gym. The timeline was perfect. Too perfect to be coincidence. My phone rang. James, right on schedule. "Hey, Dad. Just confirming. We're flying in next Friday. Landing at Houston Hobby at 2 p.m. I'll have a car pick you up. Thanks. Hey, listen, I wanted to run something by you before we get there." His voice shifted, became more serious. "You know how you mentioned investment opportunities?" "Here we go." "I remember. Well, I've been thinking. With your experience and my understanding of the tech sector, we could probably do some really interesting things together. Pool our resources, you know? Pool our resources. He had $67,000 in debt, and I had a commercial empire. Some pool." "That's worth discussing," I said neutrally. "Great. I've actually put together some preliminary ideas. Nothing formal, just thoughts. But I think you'll see the potential." He'd prepared a pitch, actually sat down and created a presentation to separate me from my money. The audacity would be impressive if it wasn't so pathetic. "I look forward to seeing it," I lied. After we hung up, I opened Curtis's report again. Brandon Thompson's photo stared back at me from page 15. Mid-40s, dark hair, strong jaw. I pulled up Sophie's Instagram on my computer. Her latest post showed her at some school event. Same dark hair, same jaw structure, same eyes. I sat back, feeling pieces click into place like a lock opening. James was bringing his family here to squeeze money from me for a daughter that might not even be his. Rebecca was playing the devoted wife while hiding the 17-year-old secret, and Sophie, the innocent pawn, had no idea her entire identity might be a lie. The cold thing in my chest that had started with James's first call grew colder still. I picked up my phone and called Curtis one more time. "I need that DNA comparison fast-tracked before they arrive next Friday." "That's only 10 days, Mr. Harper. I can't guarantee—" "Try anyway, whatever it costs." "Understood. I'll do my best." I ended the call and looked out at the Gulf. The water was gray today, choppy with wind. A storm was coming in from the south. Fitting, I thought. Very fitting indeed. Curtis Welch called me 6 days before James's arrival. Early morning, before the sun had fully burned off the Gulf fog. "I've got your results," he said without preamble. "You sitting down?" I was on my balcony with coffee, watching seagulls fight over something near the shore. "I'm listening." "Brandon Thompson is Sophie's biological father. 99.7% certainty. The hair samples matched perfectly." I took a slow sip of coffee, letting that sink in. James had been raising another man's child for 16 years. Rebecca had been lying to him for 16 years, and now they were coming here to guilt me into paying for that lie. Good work, Curtis. There's more. I kept digging into James's background like you asked. Found something else you should know about. Tell me. Your ex-wife. She had a relationship with a neighbor back when you were married. Guy named Dennis Miller. He died 5 years ago, but people who knew them back then say it was serious. Started before James was born. The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. Before? Yeah. Around the time James would have been conceived. I can't get DNA proof without a court order for exhumation, But the timeline and the witness statements, you should probably talk to your lawyer about this. I ended the call and sat there for a long moment, watching the fog dissipate over the water. 42 years. I'd spent 42 years believing James was my son, paid for his college, sent birthday cards, carried the guilt of a failed marriage and absent fatherhood, and there was a very real possibility that none of it was mine to carry. I called Gerald Martinez. I need you to petition for exhumation and DNA testing on Dennis Miller. Died 5 years ago, buried at Oakland Cemetery in Columbus. I need to know if James Harper is his biological son. Rudolph, that's a serious legal undertaking. You'll need strong justification for... I have it. My investigator found evidence of a long-term affair between Miller and my ex-wife during the time of conception. I need legal confirmation before I make any decisions about my estate. Gerald was quiet for a moment. This is going to take time, weeks, maybe months. Then start now. File whatever you need to file. Money is not an issue. Understood. I'll have the paperwork ready by end of day. I hung up and stared at my phone. 2 DNA revelations in one morning. Sophie wasn't James's daughter. James might not be my son. The foundation of their entire claim to my money was built on lies. The irony was almost beautiful. My phone rang. James. I almost laughed. Dad! His voice was tight, stressed. Listen, something's come up. It's Sophie. I felt my grip tighten on the phone. What about Sophie? She's sick. We just found out. Hodgkin's lymphoma. The doctors say she needs treatment, experimental therapy. It's our only real shot at beating this thing. The world seemed to slow down. A sick child, a 16-year-old girl with cancer. Whatever else was happening, whatever lies surrounded her parentage, she was still a child facing death. I'm sorry to hear that, James. What do the doctors say? They're recommending this treatment program in Houston, MD Anderson Cancer Center. But it's expensive, Dad. $280,000. Insurance won't cover all of it, and we don't have that kind of money. There it was. The real reason for the sudden reconciliation. Not investment opportunities. Not family bonding. Their daughter was dying, and I was the bank. Send me the medical documentation, I said. My voice sounded distant to my own ears. What? He sounded shocked. Dad, there's no time for... Send me the medical records, James. I want to see exactly what we're dealing with. Today. You're asking for proof? Your granddaughter is sick and you want proof? The coldness in my chest spread outward. You contacted me after 8 years of silence. You've been lying to me about investment opportunities when what you really wanted was money. Yes, James, I want proof. Send me the medical records or we're done talking. He sucked in a breath. Fine, I'll send them. But I hope you can live with yourself if something happens while you're playing detective. He hung up. I sat there, phone in hand, watching the gulf. A sick child. Even in the middle of all this deception, there was a sick child. That complicated things. Or maybe it simplified them. The medical records arrived 2 hours later via email. I forwarded them to Gerald Martinez with instructions to have them verified by an independent medical professional. While I waited for his response, I did my own research on Hodgkin's lymphoma treatment costs and insurance coverage. What I found was interesting. Gerald called back within the hour. The medical records are legitimate. Sophie Harper does have Hodgkin's lymphoma, stage 2. The recommended treatment is aggressive but has a good success rate. And the cost? That's where it gets interesting. MD Anderson's program would indeed cost around $280,000, but 70% of that should be coverable through Medicaid if properly filed. James would need to submit certain paperwork, go through some hoops, but it's doable. Standard procedure for this type of case. So the actual out-of-pocket cost would be around $84,000, not $280,000. Correct. Still a significant amount, but far less than what James is claiming. I leaned back in my chair. He hasn't filed the Medicaid paperwork, has he? I checked. No application on file. He went straight to asking you for the full amount. Of course he did. Why jump through bureaucratic hoops when you could just squeeze your rich father instead? Thank you, Gerald. Don't tell James any of this. Let him think I'm considering his request. What are you planning, Rudolph? Justice, I said. I'm planning justice. After hanging up, I sat in my study thinking, Sophie was sick. That was real. But James was lying about the cost, manipulating the situation to extract maximum money. And Sophie might not even be his biological daughter. The pieces were all there. I just needed to arrange them correctly. I called Curtis Welch again. I need you to locate Brandon Thompson. Find out his current situation, financial, personal, everything. And Curtis, I want to know if he has any idea he has a 16-year-old daughter. You're going to tell him? I'm considering my options. Just get me the information. On it. I stood and walked to the window. Outside, the Gulf was calm now, the storm from yesterday having passed through. In 4 days, James and Rebecca would arrive. They'd tour my properties, present their investment pitch, then drop the hammer about Sophie's medical bills. They thought they were playing me, thought I was the weak link, the desperate father so hungry for reconciliation I'd hand over anything they asked for. They had no idea what was coming. I opened my laptop and started a new document. Began listing everything I knew, everything I could prove, everything that was still uncertain. DNA results on Sophie. Confirmed. Medical records? Verified but cost inflated. Potential DNA issues with James, pending court approval. Rebecca's affair, documented. James's financial desperation, thoroughly catalogued. By the time I finished, it was dark outside. The document was 12 pages long, a complete dossier of lies, debts, and deceptions. I saved it with a simple file name, truth.docs. Then I made one final call for the evening. Martinez Law Office. Gerald, it's Rudolph again. I need you to prepare something else for me. A trust restructuring proposal. I want to see what it would look like if I removed James as a beneficiary, completely, and redirected those assets elsewhere. Charitable foundations, that sort of thing. That's a significant change, Rudolph. Are you sure? I looked at the truth document on my screen, at the years of silence and manipulation, at the lies built on lies. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I'll have options for you by Friday. I ended the call and stood up, walked out to the balcony one more time. The night air was cool, carrying the salt smell of the ocean. Somewhere out there in the darkness, a boat's horn sounded, low and mournful. In 4 days, James would walk into my home, thinking he was about to claim his inheritance early. Instead, he was going to discover exactly what it cost to treat your father like an ATM for 30 years. I smiled into the darkness. And that's when I understood exactly how to repay them for every ignored birthday, every silent Christmas, every year of being erased from my own son's life. The game wasn't just starting, it was already won. The medical verification came back the following morning. Gerald Martinez called me at 8 a.m. sharp. The records are legitimate, Rudolph. Sophie Harper does have stage 2 Hodgkin's lymphoma. Prognosis is actually quite good with proper treatment, around 85% survival rate. I sat at my desk, looking out at the Gulf. A fishing boat was heading out for the day's catch. And the financials? That's where it gets interesting. I had my paralegal check with MD Anderson's Financial Assistance Department. With Sophie's case, there's a high probability of Medicaid coverage. We're talking 70% of the total cost, possibly more. James would need to fill out applications, provide tax returns, go through some bureaucratic processes, but it's absolutely doable. I did the math in my head. 70% of $280,000 was $196,000, leaving $84,000 out of pocket. Still significant, but nowhere near the $250,000 James was demanding. Has he filed any Medicaid applications? I checked. Nothing on record. He went straight to asking you for the full amount. Of course he did. Why navigate the system when you could just guilt-trip your wealthy father? Don't tell him about the Medicaid option, I said. I want to see how far he'll push this. Rudolph, a child's health is at stake here. Are you sure? Sophie will get her treatment, Gerald. I'm going to make sure of that. But not the way James expects. Trust me on this. After we hung up, I called Curtis Welch. You find Brandon Thompson yet? Found him yesterday. Lives in Indianapolis, like I said. Physical therapist, married to a woman named Kelly. 2 kids, boy and girl, ages 8 and 6. Decent income, no major debts, clean record. Model citizen type. Does he know about Sophie? Not unless Rebecca told him, which seems unlikely given that she's still married to James. From what I can tell, Thompson has no idea he has a 16-year-old daughter. I leaned back in my chair. I need DNA confirmation. Can you get samples? Already working on it. Sophie posted on Instagram 3 days ago from a salon in Columbus. Hair Transformation Day with about 50 hashtags. I've got a contact who can retrieve samples from the salon's disposal. For Thompson, I'm working an angle through his physiotherapy office. Should have both within the week. Fast track it if you can. I need those results before James arrives. Understood. I'll push my contacts. I spent the next 3 days in a strange state of calm. The kind of calm that comes before a hurricane. I reviewed my properties, checked my accounts, met with Gerald to finalize the trust restructuring documents. Everything was being positioned exactly where I needed it. On the 4th day, Curtis called. Got your results. You sitting down? Always am when you call with news like this. Brandon Thompson is Sophie's biological father. 99.7% probability. The DNA markers are unmistakable. She's his kid, not James's. I felt something settle in my chest. Not satisfaction exactly. More like the final piece of a puzzle clicking into place. Send me everything. Full report, chain of custody documentation, the works. I want it airtight. Already on its way to your email. Rudolph, what are you planning to do with this? The right thing, I said. Eventually. That evening my phone rang. James, right on schedule. Dad, I need an answer. Sophie starts treatment in 2 weeks. The hospital needs payment confirmation or they won't reserve the slot. I took a slow sip of scotch. I'm still reviewing the situation. Reviewing? His voice rose. There's nothing to review. Your granddaughter is sick. She needs treatment. You have the money. It's that simple. Simple. Nothing about this was simple. What about insurance? Have you explored all your coverage options? We've done everything we can. Insurance won't cover experimental treatments. You know how these companies are. They'd rather let people die than pay out. Interesting. He was lying now. The treatment MD Anderson recommended wasn't experimental. It was standard care with a high success rate. But he was banking on me, not checking, not verifying, just writing the check like the fool he thought I was. Send me the insurance denial letters, I said. What? The letters from your insurance company denying coverage. I want to see them. There was a pause. Too long. They're around somewhere. Rebecca handles that stuff. But Dad, we're running out of time. Then you better find them quickly. I don't write 6-figure checks without proper documentation. Are you serious right now? This is your granddaughter's life. I set down my scotch glass with deliberate care. Then treat it seriously, James. Get me the documentation. All of it. Insurance denials, detailed treatment plans, cost breakdowns, everything. Until then, we have nothing to discuss. I hung up before he could respond. My phone immediately started ringing again. I let it go to voicemail. Then again, and again. 4 calls in 5 minutes. The 5th call, I answered. Dad, please. James's voice was desperate now. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have pushed. But you have to understand. We're terrified. Sophie is our whole world. Our whole world. The daughter he'd ignored for 16 years until she became useful leverage. Get me the documentation, James. That's my final word. I ended the call and blocked his number for the night. I needed silence to think. The next morning, Gerald called again. The exhumation petition was approved. We can proceed with Dennis Miller's DNA testing. Results should take about 3 weeks once we have the samples. 3 weeks. 3 weeks to find out if the man I'd called son for 42 years was actually my son at all. Do it, I said. Rudolph, have you thought about what you'll do if James isn't mine? Yes, Gerald. I've thought about it extensively. Just get me the results. That afternoon, I received an email from James. Subject line, please read, important. Inside were scanned documents, medical bills, treatment plans, insurance statements. I forwarded everything to Gerald and waited. He called back within the hour. The insurance information is incomplete. They're showing denials for specific experimental procedures, but the standard treatment protocol MD Anderson uses isn't mentioned anywhere. Either James is cherry-picking which documents to send, or he never actually explored the standard coverage options. Which do you think? Honestly, I think he saw dollar signs and stopped looking for alternatives. Why file paperwork when Rich Dad can solve everything? I thanked Gerald and hung up, opened my laptop and pulled up the truth document, added a new section, insurance fraud, misrepresentation of coverage options. The dossier was growing. Soon it would be complete, and then James would learn what it really cost to lie to me. The harassment started the next day. James called at 7 in the morning, then at 9, at 11, at 1 in the afternoon, each call more desperate than the last. I didn't answer any of them, just let them pile up in my voicemail, a digital record of his increasing panic. The voicemails were fascinating in their evolution. The first was apologetic. Dad, I'm sorry if I seem pushy. Let's talk this through calmly. By the third, anger was creeping in. You can't just ignore me. This is serious. Call me back. The fifth was pure rage. What kind of father are you? Your granddaughter is dying and you're playing games? I saved every single one. That evening, Rebecca called from her own phone. I answered, curious to hear how she'd play this. Rudolph. Her voice was soft, wounded, the sound of a woman barely holding herself together. Please, I'm begging you. Sophie needs this treatment. Hello, Rebecca. He's not handling this well. The stress is destroying him. But I understand you want to be careful. I respect that. Could we at least talk? Face to face? Help you understand what we're dealing with. I already understand what you're dealing with, Rebecca. $67,000 in personal debt. $43,000 in designer purchases last year alone. $18,000 in overdue school tuition. Should I continue? The silence on the other end was profound. How do you know that? I know a lot of things, Rebecca. More than you'd be comfortable with. Are you spying on us? Her voice hardened, the wounded mother act dropping instantly. I'm protecting my assets. There's a difference. You and James contacted me after 8 years of silence, started making demands, and expected me to just hand over money without due diligence. That's not how I do business. This isn't business. This is family. Family, I repeated. The word tasted bitter. Tell me, Rebecca, when was the last time you treated me like family? Was it the 15 years you prevented James from visiting? Or the 16 years you never once had Sophie send a thank you note for birthday cards? Refresh my memory. That's not fair. No, what's not fair is using a sick child as leverage to extract money from someone you've spent years treating like an ATM. What's not fair is lying about insurance coverage options. What's not fair is expecting me to hand over $250,000 without asking questions. We're not lying. The insurance won't cover. The insurance will cover 70% if you file the proper Medicaid paperwork. I've already verified it. So the question becomes, Rebecca, why are you asking me for $280,000 when the actual out-of-pocket cost is closer to $84,000? And why haven't you filed the Medicaid applications? Another long silence. When she spoke again, her voice was ice. You're a cruel man, Rudolph. No wonder your son wanted nothing to do with you. Perhaps. But I'm not the one lying to a sick child about her treatment options. Think about that, Rebecca. I hung up. The phone rang immediately. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again. And again. I turned off the ringer and poured myself a scotch. My email pinged. Message from James. Subject, you're going to regret this. I didn't even open it. Just forwarded it to Gerald with a note. Add to file. Possible future harassment case. The next day, the calls continued. James, Rebecca, James again. At one point, they called from Sophie's phone, hoping I'd answer if I saw a different number. I recognized the area code and let it ring through. The voicemail from that call was Sophie herself. Young voice. Scared. Grandpa? It's Sophie. I don't know if you remember me, but Mom and Dad say you might be able to help with my medical bills. I'm really scared about the treatment, and I just wanted to say hi and thank you. If you can help. Okay, bye. That one hit differently. Whatever James and Rebecca were, Sophie was still just a kid. A sick kid who had no idea her parents were using her as a bargaining chip. I saved that voicemail too. Then I called Curtis Welch. I need you to dig deeper into my own past now. My ex-wife and Dennis Miller. I need to know if James is actually my biological son. Rudolph, are you sure you want to open this door? Some answers you can't unknow. I stopped being sure of anything the moment James called me after 8 years wanting money. Get me the truth, Curtis, whatever it is. I'll need to move carefully. Dennis Miller's been dead 5 years. We'll need legal authorization for DNA comparison. Gerald Martinez is already filing the petition for exhumation. You coordinate with him. I want those results as fast as legally possible. Understood. But Rudolph, what are you going to do if James isn't your son? I looked out at the Gulf. Storm clouds were building on the horizon again. I'm going to do what I should have done 30 years ago. I'm going to stop pretending blood means loyalty. Over the next 2 weeks, the calls from James and Rebecca became daily occurrences, sometimes twice daily. I blocked their numbers. They called from new ones. They tried email, text, even sent a certified letter that I refused to sign for. Gerald kept me updated on the legal proceedings. The exhumation was approved. DNA samples were collected. Now we waited for the lab results. Curtis sent updates on Brandon Thompson. The man had no idea he had a 16-year-old daughter. No idea that 17 years ago, a brief affair had created a life. He seemed like a decent man. Good father to his 2 kids. Stable marriage, honest work. The kind of father Sophie deserved. Not James, who'd ignored her until she became useful. On the 3rd week, Gerald called. Results are in. You want me to email them or do you want to meet in person? What do they say? A pause. Dennis Miller is James's biological father. Probability 99.6%. Rudolph, I'm sorry. I felt nothing. That's what surprised me most. No anger, no betrayal, no sadness. Just a cold, clear certainty that I'd been right to suspect all along. Thank you, Gerald. Email me the full report. What's your next move? I looked at the calendar on my desk. 3 weeks since Sophie's diagnosis. 2 weeks since the DNA results on her parentage. 1 week since I'd last spoken to James. Time to bring this to an end. Set up a meeting. Tell James and Rebecca I'm ready to discuss financial assistance. Have them fly to Galveston. I'll put them up at a hotel. We'll have dinner. Talk about Sophie's treatment. You're going to help them? I'm going to do the right thing, Gerald. I'm just not going to do it the way they expect. I hung up and walked to my balcony. The storm clouds had passed. The Gulf was clear again, stretched out endless and blue. James thought he was coming to Texas to collect his inheritance early. Rebecca thought she'd finally cracked the code to accessing my money. They had no idea I'd been building a case against them for weeks. DNA evidence, financial records, insurance fraud, 16 years of documented neglect. I smiled at the horizon. Let them come. Let them walk into my home with their lies and manipulations, because I was about to teach them the most expensive lesson of their lives. And the tuition? It would cost them everything. They arrived on a Thursday afternoon. I watched from my balcony as the black sedan I'd sent pulled up to my beachfront property. James stepped out first, looking around with poorly concealed assessment. Calculating. Always calculating. Rebecca emerged next, wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than their monthly mortgage. Her eyes went wide when she saw the house. $4.2 million of Gulfront real estate, glass and steel and money. Rudolph! James called up, waving, the prodigal son returning. The performance was almost convincing. I walked down to greet them. James extended his hand. I shook it, feeling the slight tremor in his grip. Nerves or desperation? Probably both. Dad, thank you for this. Really. His voice was warm, but his eyes were cold. Transactional. James, Rebecca. I nodded to her. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes either. Your home is beautiful, Rebecca said, looking past me at the entrance. Sophie would have loved to see this. The guilt card, right on schedule. She's still receiving treatment? I asked. Starting next week, if we can secure the funding. James's jaw tightened. That's what we need to discuss. All in good time. You must be tired from the flight. I've made dinner reservations for this evening. Guido's Seafood Restaurant. Best in Galveston. We'll talk then. I could see the frustration flash across James's face. He wanted to talk now, pin me down, get his answer. But he forced a smile. That sounds great, Dad. I showed them around the house. watched Rebecca's eyes linger on the artwork, the furniture, the view, her fingers trailing over surfaces like she was already claiming ownership. James asked questions about property values, maintenance costs, rental income potential. Not one question about how I was doing. Not one comment about the view, the architecture, the life I'd built. Just numbers. Everything was always just numbers to them. That evening we drove to Guido's. The restaurant sat right on the seawall, windows overlooking the Gulf. I'd requested a private corner table. What was about to happen didn't need an audience. We ordered, made small talk. James and Rebecca were performing again. The loving family, concerned parents, dutiful son. I played along, watching them work, cataloging every manipulation. Then halfway through the main course, James set down his fork. Here we go. Dad, we need to talk seriously about Sophie's situation. I'm listening. The treatment starts in 5 days. We need $280,000. The hospital won't proceed without payment confirmation. He leaned forward. I know it's a lot to ask, but you have the resources, multiple properties, investments. If you could just liquidate 1 or 2 assets. You want me to sell my properties? I kept my voice neutral. Not all of them. Just enough to cover the treatment. It's your granddaughter's life, Dad. Rebecca joined in, her voice breaking perfectly on cue. We've exhausted every option. Insurance won't cover it. We've drained our savings. Sophie is terrified. She's just a child. I took a slow sip of water. Set the glass down with deliberate care. Actually, James, I've done some research. The treatment MD Anderson is recommending isn't experimental. It's standard protocol for stage 2 Hodgkin's lymphoma. Medicaid should cover about 70% of the cost. James's face froze. What? Medicaid. You know, the federal health insurance program? If you file the proper paperwork, your out-of-pocket cost would be around $84,000, not $280,000. Rebecca's mouth opened, closed, opened again. We tried that. They denied us. Did they? Because I had my attorney check. There's no application on file in your name. The color was draining from James's face. You investigated us? Due diligence. You asked me for $250,000. I'd be a fool not to verify the information. I leaned back. So here's what I know. You never filed for Medicaid. You inflated the cost by $200,000. You lied. We didn't lie. James's voice rose. Other diners glanced over. He lowered it. The full treatment could cost that much. With complications, additional therapies. Could, might, maybe. But you didn't tell me about the Medicaid option. You came straight to me, demanding I sell my assets, guilting me about my granddaughter. I paused. My granddaughter. That's an interesting term. Rebecca's hand tightened on her wineglass. What are you saying? I reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out a manila folder, set it on the table between us. Open it. James looked at Rebecca. She looked at him. Neither moved. Open it, I repeated. James's hand shook as he pulled the folder toward him. Opened it. Started reading. I watched his face. Watched the confusion, then the comprehension, then the horror wash over his features like a wave. His skin went from tan to white in seconds. The paper trembled in his hands. This can't be. His voice was barely a whisper. Rebecca grabbed the folder from him. Her eyes scanned the page. The DNA analysis. Brandon Thompson. Sophie Harper. 99.7% probability of paternity. Her face turned to stone. Literally, like watching flesh become granite. I don't understand, James said, looking at Rebecca. What is this? Who's Brandon Thompson? Rebecca's lips moved, but no sound came out. I leaned forward, my voice calm, almost gentle. Brandon Thompson is a physical therapist in Indianapolis. 17 years ago, he worked at your gym, Rebecca, as a personal trainer. You had an affair with him for approximately 8 months. No, Rebecca's voice was small. No, the timeline matches Sophie's conception perfectly. The DNA evidence is irrefutable. Sophie isn't James's daughter. She's Brandon Thompson's daughter. James turned to Rebecca, his eyes wide with something between rage and heartbreak. Tell me this isn't true. Tell me he's lying. Rebecca's hands were shaking. The folder slipped from her fingers, papers scattering across the table. DNA graphs, lab reports, timeline analyses, all of it pointing to one inescapable truth. "I can explain," she whispered. "James, please, I can—" 16 years. His voice cracked. "I raised her for 16 years. I picked up my fork, cut a piece of fish. "So you see, James, when you demanded I give you $2.5 million because it was my duty as Sophie's grandfather, you were operating under a false assumption." James looked at me, his eyes hollow. "You knew. How long have you known?" "Long enough. I had a private investigator retrieve hair samples. Legal, of course. Chain of custody fully documented. Had it tested against samples from Brandon Thompson. You've been investigating my wife?" I took a bite of fish, chewed slowly, swallowed. "I've been investigating everyone who suddenly appeared in my life after 8 years of silence demanding money. Seemed prudent." Rebecca was crying now. Real tears, not the manipulative kind from earlier. "James, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It was a mistake. A stupid mistake. I thought she was yours." "Thought?" James's laugh was ugly. "You thought? For 16 years you thought?" I set down my fork, looked James directly in the eye. "Here's what's interesting, James. You came here demanding I fulfill my duty as a grandfather, calling on blood ties, family obligation." I paused. "She's not yours." 3 words. The same 3 words I'd been rehearsing for weeks. James stared at me. The words seemed to echo in the space between us. "She's not yours. Not mine to save. Not his to claim. A child built on a lie, used as a weapon, and neither of them, had any right to demand anything from me." James's face contorted. Rage, shame, humiliation, all fighting for dominance. "You bastard! You cold-hearted bastard!" "Maybe, but I'm not the one who built a family on lies." I folded my napkin, placed it on the table. "Now shall we discuss the real reason you're here?" Rebecca was sobbing openly now. James looked like he'd been gutted, and I felt nothing but cold, clear satisfaction. The first domino had fallen, but I wasn't done yet. Rebecca tried to compose herself, dabbing at her eyes with her napkin. James sat frozen, staring at the DNA results scattered across the table. Around us, the restaurant continued its normal rhythm. Clinking glasses, quiet conversations, the distant crash of waves. But at our table, the world had stopped. "This doesn't change anything," James said finally. His voice was hollow, but he was grasping for control. "Sophie is still my daughter in every way that matters. I raised her. I'm her father legally, and she still needs treatment." "Does she?" I asked mildly. "You saw the medical records." "I did. Stage 2 Hodgkin's lymphoma. 85% survival rate with standard treatment. Medicaid covers 70% of costs. Math says you need $84,000, not $280,000. "We don't have $84,000. Rebecca's voice was sharp, desperate. "We don't have anything." "Whose fault is that? The $67,000 in credit card debt? The $43,000 in designer purchases last year? The $18,000 in overdue school tuition?" I counted them off on my fingers. "You spent yourselves into a hole, Rebecca. Don't expect me to pull you out." James slammed his hand on the table. The wine glasses rattled. "She's sick. Whatever happened in the past, whatever mistakes were made, Sophie is still a 16-year-old girl with cancer." "I agree, which is why I've already taken steps to ensure she gets the treatment she needs." They both froze. "What?" James said slowly. I reached into my jacket again, pulled out a second folder, thicker than the first, placed it on the table. "What is that?" Rebecca whispered. "Insurance filing paperwork, Medicaid applications, pre-authorization forms for Sophie's treatment at MD Anderson, all properly filled out, all ready to submit. Took my attorney about 2 hours to complete." James opened the folder with shaking hands, scanned the documents. You did this?" "Sophie shouldn't suffer for her parents' incompetence or their dishonesty. So yes, I did it. File those forms, and her treatment will cost you $84,000 instead of $280,000. "We still don't have $84,000, Rebecca said. "Not my problem." I took a sip of water. "Though I'd suggest selling that Louis Vuitton collection, or that BMW you can't afford, or maybe just learn to live within your means." James's face was turning red. "After everything, this is how you help? By throwing our financial situation in our faces?" I'm throwing the truth in your faces, something you both seem allergic to. You're enjoying this? James's voice was low, dangerous, watching us squirm, watching us beg. Actually, James, I am. You contacted me after 8 years of silence, pretending to care about family while really hunting for money. You used your sick daughter as emotional blackmail. You lied about insurance costs. You demanded I liquidate my assets for you. Did you really think I'd just roll over? Rebecca leaned forward. So this is revenge? Is that what this is about? I met her eyes. This is about justice, Rebecca. There's a difference. Justice. James laughed bitterly. You wouldn't know justice if it... But that's not all, I interrupted. Reached into my jacket one final time. A third folder. James's face went pale. No. What else could you possibly... The thing about investigating family, James, is that sometimes you find answers you weren't expecting. Sometimes the lies go deeper than you thought. I placed the third folder in front of him. Don't. Rebecca's voice was barely a whisper. Please. But James was already opening it. His hands moved mechanically, like he couldn't stop himself even though he knew he should. I watched him read, watched the words register, watched his world collapse for the second time in 10 minutes. Dennis Miller. DNA analysis. Probability of paternity. 99.6%. Dennis Miller was our neighbor, James said slowly, when I was a kid. He was your mother's lover, I corrected, before you were born, during your conception for several months after. No, the DNA doesn't lie, James. He's your biological father, not me. James looked up at me. His eyes were empty. You're not my father. Biologically? No. I suspected it for 42 years. Could never prove it. Dennis died 5 years ago, but modern science is wonderful. We exhumed his body, legally with court approval, and ran the tests. Rebecca made a sound like a wounded animal. Why would you do this? Because you demanded I give you money based on family obligation, based on blood ties. Based on the idea that I owed you something, I leaned back. But you're not my blood, either of you. Sophie isn't my granddaughter. James isn't my son. And I don't owe you one single dollar. James was trembling. 42 years. You raised me for 42 years, knowing I might not be yours. Your mother and I had our suspicions. We never talked about it. Easier to pretend. But yes, I raised you. Paid for your college. Sent birthday cards you never acknowledged. Offered to help you, and you rejected me. For 30 years, you treated me like I didn't exist. So you investigated me, had my wife followed, dug up my dead father for revenge. I investigated people who were trying to manipulate me, and I found the truth. I picked up my wine glass. The question now is, what are you going to do with it? James stood up so fast his chair fell backward. Heads turned across the restaurant. You vindictive son of a... Sit down, James. No, you planned this. You invited us here just to humiliate us. I invited you here to stop you from lying to me, from using a sick child as a weapon, from pretending we're family when you've spent 3 decades proving we're not. We'll sue you. Rebecca stood too. Her face was blotchy with tears and rage. We'll take you to court. You can't just... Sue me for what? Discovering the truth? Revealing your affair? Proving that your entire claim to my estate is built on lies? I stayed seated, calm. Go ahead. Try. My attorney is Gerald Martinez, one of the best estate lawyers in Texas. Your case will be dismissed before it reaches a judge. James was shaking with rage. After everything I've been through, finding out my daughter isn't mine, finding out you're not my father, you still won't help us. I am helping. Those Medicaid forms will save Sophie's life. But I won't give you money to continue your lifestyle. I won't reward your lies. And I certainly won't pretend we're family when the DNA proves otherwise. I don't care about the DNA, James shouted. People were definitely staring now. You raised me. That makes you my father. Does it? Because for 30 years you didn't treat me like a father. For 30 years I didn't exist to you. Until you needed money. I stood up now too, met his eyes. You made your choice, James. You chose to exclude me from your life. You don't get to reverse that choice just because you're drowning in debt. Rebecca grabbed James's arm. Let's go. Let's just go. Not yet. James was breathing hard. You owe me something. for raising me under false pretenses, for making me believe I was your son when you knew I wasn't. I owe you nothing. Your mother lied to both of us. I'm a victim in this too. Then why didn't you tell me? If you suspected for 42 years, why didn't you say something? I paused. That was a fair question. Because I hoped I was wrong. Because blood doesn't always make family. Because I tried, James. I really tried. But you made it very clear you wanted nothing to do with me. So this is punishment. This is consequences. You spent 30 years treating me like an ATM. Now you've learned that ATMs require the right card to work, and yours was always invalid. James picked up the DNA folders, all 3 of them, held them against his chest like they were burning him. You're a monster, perhaps, but I'm an honest monster, which is more than I can say for either of you. Rebecca tugged James toward the door. He resisted for a moment, staring at me with pure hatred. Then something in him broke. His shoulders sagged. He let Rebecca lead him away. I sat back down, picked up my fork. The fish was getting cold. The waiter approached cautiously. Sir, is everything all right? Fine, I said. Just family dinner. You know how it goes. He nodded uncertainly and retreated. I finished my meal alone, watching the gulf through the window. The sun was setting, painting everything gold and red. Somewhere out there, James and Rebecca were probably in their hotel room, their world shattered, learning that their daughter wasn't theirs, that their son wasn't mine, that their entire leverage had evaporated. I felt no guilt, no remorse, just cold, clear satisfaction. They'd come to Texas thinking they'd found an easy mark, a lonely old man desperate for family who'd write checks to buy their affection. Instead, they'd found someone who'd spent 30 years in commercial real estate, someone who knew how to read people, how to verify claims, how to call bluffs. I paid the check and walked out to my car. The game was almost over, just one more move to make. They tried to fight back. Of course they did. 2 weeks after returning to Ohio, Gerald Martinez called me. James Harper has filed suit against you. Emotional distress, breach of implied contract, and, this is creative, fraudulent misrepresentation of familial relationship. I was on my balcony, morning coffee in hand, watching a pelican dive for fish. Fraudulent misrepresentation? I proved I wasn't related to him. How is that fraud? His attorney argues you knowingly raised him as your son for 42 years, creating an expectation of inheritance, then revealed the truth only to avoid financial obligation. Gerald paused. It's nonsense, but it'll tie up a few weeks of court time. How much are they asking for? $500,000 in damages, plus legal fees. I almost laughed, still chasing money they'd never see. Countersue for harassment. Use all those voicemails and emails as evidence. And Gerald, don't settle. Take this all the way. Understood. One more thing. They're also claiming you promised to help with Sophie's medical bills. No recordings of that promise exist because it never happened. We have my investigation records showing I was verifying their claims, not agreeing to them. Discovery will destroy their case. That's what I thought. I'll file the response today. The lawsuit proceeded exactly as I expected. James's attorney, some third-tier ambulance chaser working on contingency, tried to paint me as a vindictive father figure who'd cruelly abandoned a sick child. Gerald systematically dismantled every argument. We produced the Medicaid paperwork I'd prepared, proving Sophie could get treatment for a fraction of the claim cost. We showed James's financial irresponsibility, the $67,000 in debt, the luxury purchases, the ignored insurance options. We demonstrated that I'd been contacted after 8 years of silence, specifically for money, not family reconciliation. The judge dismissed the case within 6 weeks. No damages, no settlement, legal fees on James. The ruling was scathing. The judge actually used the phrase opportunistic manipulation of familial relationships. Gerald called to tell me, "Complete victory, Rudolph. They have nothing. No claim, no leverage, no recourse." Good. Now for the next phase. I'd been planning it since that dinner at Guido's. While James was wasting money on pointless lawsuits, I was arranging something that would actually help Sophie. Brandon Thompson. I had Gerald reach out to him. Professional. Careful. Mr. Thompson, my name is Gerald Martinez. I'm an attorney representing a matter that concerns you directly. 16 years ago, you had a relationship with a woman named Rebecca Harper. I need to discuss something important about that relationship. Brandon agreed to meet. We flew him to Houston, put him up at a decent hotel. I met him the next morning. He was 43, fit, with kind eyes and an honest handshake. The kind of man who coaches Little League and remembers birthdays. Everything James pretended to be, but wasn't. "Mr. Harper," he said as we sat down, "your attorney mentioned Rebecca. We dated briefly 17 years ago. But I'm married now, happily, and I don't see how—" "You have a daughter, Mr. Thompson, Sophie Harper. She's 16 years old." His face went blank. "What?" I pushed the DNA results across the table. "Rebecca became pregnant during your relationship. She never told you. Probably never planned to. But the timeline matches, and the DNA is conclusive. Sophie is your biological daughter." He read the documents 3 times. His hands were shaking. "I have a daughter?" "You do. And she's sick. Hodgkin's lymphoma, stage 2. She needs treatment. Is she going to be okay?" His voice cracked. "With proper treatment, yes. The prognosis is good. But that's why I'm here." Rebecca and her husband, a man who believed he was Sophie's father, came to me asking for money. $280,000. They claimed insurance wouldn't cover it. Will it? 70% through Medicaid if properly filed. The real out-of-pocket cost is about $84,000. Still significant, but manageable. Brandon sat back. "Why are you telling me this? What do you want?" I respected that. Straight to the point. "I want Sophie to get treatment from someone who actually cares about her, not someone using her as leverage. I'll contribute $140,000, half the original claim cost, if you legally establish paternity and take responsibility for her care." "You'd give me $140,000? Not give, invest, in a child's future, in doing the right thing. Rebecca lied to you for 16 years. She kept you from your daughter. Now you have a chance to be the father Sophie deserves." He was quiet for a long moment. "What about her, the man who raised her, James?" "James Harper is not my biological son either. We recently discovered that. He has no legal claim to me or my estate. And after the DNA results, his relationship with Sophie is complicated. But Sophie is innocent in all this. She deserves treatment, and she deserves a real father." Brandon looked at the DNA report again. "I have 2 other kids, 8 and 6. Sophie would be their half-sister." "Yes." "My wife. This is going to be a shock." "I imagine so. But Mr. Thompson, in my experience, the truth usually is shocking. The question is what you do with it." He met my eyes. Strong gaze. Steady. "If I do this, if I establish paternity, what happens to Rebecca?" "She'll face consequences for concealing your parental rights. That's a legal matter. But more importantly, Sophie gets proper care, proper support, and a father who chose to step up, rather than one who was tricked into it." Brandon was silent for another minute. Then he nodded. "Okay, I'll do it. Not for the money. Keep your money if you want. But I'll establish paternity. I'll be there for her." I pushed an envelope across the table. "The money isn't for you. It's for Sophie's treatment and future. Use it wisely." He took the envelope. "Why are you doing this? If James isn't your son, why do you care?" "Because Sophie sent me a voicemail. She was scared, alone, being used as a pawn by adults who should have protected her. She deserves better than that." I stood up. "Besides, this isn't about Sophie. This is about proving to James and Rebecca that they don't get to use people and walk away clean." We shook hands. Brandon's grip was firm. "Thank you, Mr. Harper. Thank you for being the kind of man who steps up. Sophie needs that." The legal process moved quickly. Brandon filed for paternity. The DNA evidence was irrefutable. The court recognized him as Sophie's biological father. Rebecca fought it, of course, but her lies were documented, time-stamped, undeniable. The judge granted Brandon parental rights, joint custody with Rebecca, with provisions for Sophie's medical care. Rebecca lost her exclusive control. More importantly, she lost her weapon. Gerald kept me updated. Sophie started treatment last week. Brandon's been there for every appointment. Apparently, he and his wife are talking about having Sophie stay with them during recovery. And James? Radio silence. Haven't heard from him since the lawsuit was dismissed. I smiled. Good. Let him sit in that silence. Let him think about 30 years of treating me like I didn't exist, then demanding I fix his life when it fell apart. You got what you wanted, Rudolph. Complete victory. Not yet, I said. There's one more thing to finalize. The trust restructuring. $8.7 million in assets, properties, investments. Everything I'd built over 30 years. None of it going to James. I signed the papers, transferring everything to Coastal Conservation Texas, a charity dedicated to protecting the Gulf shoreline. The beaches where I'd found peace. The waters that had witnessed my transformation from disappointed father to independent man. Gerald witnessed the signature. This is final, Rudolph. Once filed, James has no claim to any of this. That's the point. He spent 3 decades proving he didn't want to be my family. I'm just making it official. The papers were filed. The trust was restructured. Legally, irrevocably, permanently. James Harper would inherit nothing. And I felt absolutely nothing but satisfaction. 3 months later, I was sitting on my balcony watching the sunset paint the Gulf in shades of orange and purple. October in Galveston is perfect. Warm days, cool evenings, the summer crowds gone, leaving just the sound of waves and seabirds. My phone buzzed. Unknown Indianapolis number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mr. Harper? It's Brandon Thompson. Brandon, how's Sophie? That's why I'm calling. His voice was thick with emotion. She's in remission. The doctors say the treatment worked better than expected. Her latest scans are clean. They're calling it a complete response. I felt something unfamiliar in my chest. Relief? Actual relief? That's excellent news. She's staying with us for a while, getting her strength back. Kelly, my wife, she's been amazing. Our kids adore their big sister. He paused. Sophie wants to thank you. For the money. For everything you did. I didn't do it for thanks. I know, but she wanted me to tell you anyway. And Mr. Harper, you were right about Rebecca. The court found her guilty of concealing parental information. She lost primary custody. Sophie chose to live with us full-time once she's recovered enough. How's she handling that? Sophie? Better than you'd think. Turns out, learning your real father actually wants you is pretty powerful medicine. Another pause. What about James? Have you heard from him? No, and I don't expect to. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. Sophie needed real family, not people using her as leverage. Thank you, Brandon. Take care of her. I will, I promise. I hung up and sat there, feeling the Gulf breeze on my face. Sophie was in remission. She had a father who chose her. Rebecca had lost her manipulative power. James had lost everything he thought he was entitled to. Justice had been served. The next day, a courier arrived with a certified envelope from Gerald Martinez. I knew what it was before I opened it. The final court order. James Harper's lawsuit for inheritance rights. Officially permanently dismissed. The judge's ruling was attached. I read it with my morning coffee. The court finds no legal basis for the plaintiff's claim. DNA evidence conclusively demonstrates the absence of biological relationship. Furthermore, the plaintiff's 30-year estrangement from the defendant, followed by sudden contact coinciding with financial need, demonstrates opportunistic intent rather than familial relationship. All claims dismissed with prejudice. With prejudice, meaning James could never file this suit again. Ever. I set the papers down and picked up the second document. The trust transfer, fully executed. $8.7 million to Coastal Conservation Texas. The charity had already sent me a letter thanking me for the donation, detailing their plans for habitat restoration and beach preservation. My money would protect the coastline I loved. It would fund education programs, wildlife conservation, clean water initiatives. It would do actual good in the world, instead of funding James's designer lifestyle and Rebecca's lies. My phone rang. Gerald Martinez. You saw the documents? He asked. Just finished reading them. It's over, Rudolph. Completely over. James has no legal standing, no claim, no recourse. Your estate is protected. Sophie's getting treatment. The people who tried to manipulate you have lost everything they were trying to gain, and gain nothing but the truth about themselves. Poetic justice. How are you feeling? I looked out at the Gulf. A fishing boat was heading out for the evening catch, its lights just starting to flicker on against the darkening sky. Satisfied, content, ready to move forward. You earned it. What you did, standing up to them, protecting yourself, but still helping Sophie, that took courage. It took clarity. They spent 30 years showing me who they were. I just finally believed them. After hanging up, I poured myself a scotch. The good stuff, the bottle I saved for significant moments. Walked out to the balcony and raised the glass to the sunset. To truth, I said to the empty air, and to consequences. The sun dipped below the horizon, turning the water from gold to silver to darkness. I thought about James, somewhere in Ohio, learning what it meant to lose everything through his own choices. I thought about Rebecca, facing the reality that lies eventually collapse. I thought about 30 years of silence, manipulation, and betrayal, and I felt nothing but peace. They'd treated me like a bank, like an obligation, like someone who didn't matter until they needed something. They'd ignored me for 3 decades, then showed up with hands out and expectations high. They'd forgotten a simple truth. You can't neglect someone for 30 years and then demand they save you. Well, now they knew. My phone buzzed one last time. A text from an unknown number. I almost deleted it, but curiosity won. You destroyed my life. I hope you're happy. James. One final attempt at making me feel guilty. I typed back 3 words. The same 3 words I'd said at Guido's, the ones that had started this whole collapse. She's not yours. I hit send, then blocked the number. Done. Finally, completely done. I finished my scotch and went inside. Tomorrow I had a meeting with Coastal Conservation Texas. They wanted to name their new sea turtle rehabilitation center after me. I was considering it, but tonight I just wanted to sit with the satisfaction of a job well done, of standing up for myself, of teaching 2 people a lesson they'd needed for 30 years. Never underestimate someone you betrayed, because when they finally learn the truth, when they finally see who you really are, they won't forget, and they definitely won't forgive, but they will learn, and sometimes that's justice enough. I walked to the window one last time, looking out at the dark gulf, the lights of ships passing in the distance. Somewhere out there, James and Rebecca were living with the consequences of their choices. Sophie was healing with a father who actually chose to be there, and I was here, in the home I'd built, with the life I'd earned, finally free from people who'd never valued me. The story was over. The game was won. And for the first time in 30 years, I felt like I could breathe. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching,